Getting the best price possible on a property is absolutely critical when it comes to a high interest rate environment. However, if you don't know how to negotiate to get the best deal possible, you may be leaving money on the table. Furthermore, the realtor representing you might not be sharing everything you need to know to make the best offer. Whether maybe they aren't educated on all the tricks in the book, or they don't want to tell you because it can hurt their commissions. So let's talk about the top negotiating techniques for real estate that your realtor doesn't want you to know. First off, it's important to know that realtors are motivated by the sale of the property because that's how they get paid. This isn't a bad thing, but it also means that getting the best price or deal possible isn't necessarily priority number one for them. So understanding their priorities is key to working with them to craft the best offer. You need to know your role before engaging with any agent. First, let's talk about understanding your role, which has changed in the last few months with the new laws regarding how commissions are displayed on the MLS. In August of 2024, a new agreement of how commissions can be listed on a property was enforced. The NAR settlement agreement is a legal document where the National Association of Realtors, NAR, agreed to settle a class action lawsuit by making significant changes to how real estate commissions are displayed on the MLS, essentially prohibiting agents from listing a buyer agent's commission on the MLS. And it requires a written agreement between the buyer and their agent regarding their compensation. This means that you, as the buyer, are responsible for negotiating with your agent about their commissions before, keyword before, you even offer on a property. Furthermore, you, as the buyer, are fully responsible for your agent's commissions, regardless if the seller pays them or not. That's really important. We're going to talk about that some more in detail, meaning that you have to work out who pays your agent's commissions with the seller. Now, most properties listed since August have not been impacted by sellers not offering to pay commissions, meaning they're covering it. However, we have seen a few properties where the sellers are not offering to cover the buyer agent's side, and I'm sure we'll see more in the future. This has led to questions of what can you do if that happens, and how can you best negotiate with sellers? So in this video, we're going to discuss what you need to know when negotiating with your realtor that your realtor may not want you to know. So let's hit it. Okay, big disclaimer. This is disclaimer number one. I am not a licensed agent or a licensed anything except to drive, but I've done over 100 real estate transactions last year in 2024 alone, 104 to be exact. So I know a thing or two about real estate and negotiating. Also, I'm only speaking to investors, not primary home buyers, although everyone can learn from this content. Number two, I do not believe you should represent yourself on any property without a licensed realtor, unless you are local or you have lots of experience in real estate investing and you know a lot about the area you're about to invest in. Realtors are extremely knowledgeable and know the ins and outs of their markets. They provide the boots on the ground and expertise that data or good photography on Zillow can't provide. Number three, every real estate transaction can be different. Surprise. Just because I tell you a specific way to negotiate, which has worked for me, doesn't mean it will work for you on every single purchase. I'm simply providing you with multiple negotiation weapons in your arsenal to use at the appropriate times. The ideal real estate transactions are properties that are priced perfectly right, have no maintenance issues, and appraised with no negotiations needed. But that's rare. So there's a time and a place to negotiate, and understanding that will give you the best advantage. I think it's important to understand that when negotiating real estate transactions based on what is agreed upon with contingencies, you can really negotiate throughout the majority of the process. You just have to be clear up front. Agents like to tell you what due diligence periods and other typical contingencies are in a set amount of time, similar across all transactions. But in reality, you decide what those actually look like. And if your seller agrees, voila, you have an accepted offer. I will say that agents are there to help you have the best attractive offer that will be accepted. They should provide you with as much information information as they can, but ultimately it is your responsibility to determine the offer amount based on the information provided. You can get extremely creative, but understand the risk of potentially losing a property due to a crazy or confusing offer to a seller. So let's first dive into when you can actually negotiate. Overall, there are 3 key periods when you can negotiate on a real estate transaction, assuming you had no other contingencies. So number 1, before your offer is accepted. Number 2, during the inspection period. Or number 3, after the appraisal on the value of the property comes in, assuming that the appraisal was lower than the accepted offer price and you had an appraisal contingency. That's really important. However, the opportune time to negotiate is the number 1 time, which is before your offer is accepted. You can negotiate on price, furnishings provided, negotiate for repairs or improvements, or even pay for contractors who come in after you buy the property, and pretty much anything, including the leg lamp in the front room. You will also need to negotiate your realtor's commission way before you even offer on the property. There are 2 opportunities to negotiate their commission amount. Number 1, when you sign the buyer agent's agreement before they show you the property or they go and tour the property for you. Please keep in mind, after the recent NAR settlement agreement, realtors are supposed to have you sign a buyer agent's agreement, which basically says you won't run off and use a different realtor if you end up buying the specific property that they showed you without paying the original realtor their owed commissions. 2 quick side notes about buyer agent's agreements. Make sure there is an expiration date of 1 month or less. Typically, I like to sign per property just in case I'm not in love with the service provided by the realtor and I'm forced to wait out a whole nother month or more just to get new representation. In the buyer agent's agreement, the real estate agent will tell you what commission amount they will charge you, and you agree to pay that amount, assuming that your offer is accepted on the property. Now, there is a second time you can negotiate with a realtor about their commissions. This one they don't like to tell you about at all. But the second time is during any potential deadlock between you and the seller with your initial offer. Meaning you can ask the agent to cut their commissions down to help the deal get through. But you can only do this before you're under contract and when you're in negotiations with the seller. Remember, as long as both parties agree in any sort of transaction, any agreement can be changed. I recently acquired a property where I offered $50K less than the asking price because I believed the property wasn't worth the asking price based on comparable sold homes. The seller refused, and no matter what I said to them about it not appraising, they just said no. I had 2 options at this point. I could either walk away or decide to pay the $50K. So I decided to get a little creative. And I went to my agent and I asked both the buyer's agent, my agent, and the seller's agent to cut their commissions from 3% each to 1.5% to make the deal work. I told them that if we couldn't get the $50K down, then I would have to walk away, and no one's getting paid at that point. Remember, realtors are incentivized by the sale of the property. In my example, both agents agreed because they knew the deal would be dead if they didn't. Now keep in mind, this property was on the market for over 120 days. So I had a ton of negotiating power. Timing is key in how much negotiating power you might have. However, beware of pride or ego. Don't let a good opportunity pass you by because the sellers didn't want to meet in the middle or you wanted to pinch every single penny out of the seller. Negotiating isn't about who wins and loses. It's about getting the best deal possible that makes both parties happy. I've seen some amazing deals crushed because the buyer wanted an additional $5K in seller credits for repairs, but the seller wasn't willing to give anything else, and this was a $2 million purchase price. A $5K difference killed the entire deal because both sides were focused on winning. Another great time to negotiate is during the inspection period. The job of the house inspector is to pretty much find things wrong with the property and then report those things to you. They will provide you a list of items that you can use as essentially ammunition, either to get the price down, money back at the closing table, or ask the seller to simply fix. Keep in mind that the further along the transaction process, the more willing the seller will be to accept any new terms for the sake of getting the deal done. Properties that fall out of contract tend to look like something is wrong with it and can scare prospective buyers away. Sellers want a quick and smooth closing process and are more willing to accept new terms as time goes on. That's really, really important to remember, especially as you're negotiating beyond inspections. Finally, one of the last times that you can negotiate in is during the appraisal period. Appraisals of the value of the property for lending purposes can come in low. If this happens, you either have to pay the gap of what you offered versus the appraised value, or the seller agrees to sell sell the property at the new appraised value. Be delicate here during this period to work with the seller by offering to get a new appraisal. But if it comes in low again, you have ammunition to offer less. Okay, all of these techniques are great, assuming that sellers are willing to work with you and that there's zero competition for the same property with a better offer. But what happens if you want a property in a multi-offer situation? How do you negotiate and get the best deal possible? The most important thing to remember when in this type of situation is that you need the most attractive offer possible, assuming that you really want the property. Here's what you can do. You can offer asking with an escalation clause up to a certain dollar amount. Okay, let's look at an example. If the property is listed at $500,000 and maybe I know that the property has 5 other offers, I can offer $500,000 with an escalation up to, let's say, $520,000, meaning that my offer will surpass any other offer up to $520,000. Now, don't just do the escalation clause. Also add an appraisal contingency clause that says the property will still need to appraise for the offer amount accepted. So if it doesn't appraise, you can then negotiate at this point, or even during inspections, to help you get the price back down, assuming that the seller will go for it. Remember, the further along the transaction process, the more likely the seller will be willing to negotiate with you. Finally, always run your numbers before making any offer on a property, especially if you aren't planning to visit before you submit an offer. Verify taxes, HOA documents, and other variables that may give you ammunition to help negotiate better terms. Stay logical and do your best to remove emotion when negotiating. Never let someone strong arm you into a property that doesn't make sense based on the numbers. Now, if you've enjoyed this video, be sure to do 2 things for me, please. Number 1, like and subscribe to the channel. And finally, number 2, share this video with someone or anyone you know who's looking to buy a property and needs help negotiating. I'll see you in the next one.